Good evening, everyone. I would like to call the Committee of the Whole meeting of May 11, 2026 to order. My name is Anna Murray, Councillor and Chair of the Planning and Economic Development Committee. I would like to begin by reading a safety notice. In the event of an emergency, please evacuate council chambers to the nearest exit through the chamber doors and obey all instructions given, and if assistance is required, please see our Deputy Clerk, who is right over here. Once you have evacuated the building, please gather in the front parking lot outside of Town Hall. Please ensure your cell phone is on silent or turned off, and the Town of Lincoln Committee of the Whole meetings are posted on our YouTube channel. Closed captioning is available on all videos by selecting the closed captioning button on the bottom right of the video. Members of committee are in attendance in person and remotely. We have staff in attendance also in person and remotely. Are there any declarations of interest? Seeing none, I'll move on to the confirmation of our agenda. Do members have any amendments to the order of the agenda? All right, then item number 5 on our agenda is statutory public meetings. We have none. We also have no consent agenda items this evening. So we'll move on to item number 7, which is Planning and Economic Development Committee agenda. We will now begin the Planning and Economic Development Committee agenda. Item 7.1 is delegations, and we do have one registered delegation this evening for the Planning and Economic Development agenda. Please note that delegations have a maximum of 5 minutes to speak. The delegation this evening is Liz Bennion regarding item 7.2.1, Maintenance of Lands Bylaw Amendments, Report PD-10-26. Ms. Bennion, please go ahead.
Mayor and members of council, thanks for allowing me to delegate about bylaw number 2018-92, known as the Clean Yards Bylaw. My name is Liz Bennion, and I'm a resident of the town of Lincoln. The changes to this bylaw brought before you tonight were meant to bring it into compliance with a recent Supreme Court decision, Ruck versus Mississauga. Unfortunately, I believe neither the town's current bylaw or the suggested changes to it bring the town's bylaw into agreement with the Supreme Court ruling. Specifically, I have concerns about 2.3, a section of the bylaw that requires any owner of a naturalized area on a residential property to maintain a 1-meter mowed buffer strip immediately adjacent to the lot lines and along all boundaries of the whole yard, lot, or parcel of land. In my discussion on this matter with Mike Barkway, I learned the 1-meter buffer rule has been in place for a long time. To me, this means that the bylaw has been out of step with the law since the 1996 decision in the Sandy Bell case, which affirmed the charter-protected right to a naturalized garden. In both the Bell and now the Ruck case, the judges found that any infringement of that right must stand up to evidence-based tests under Section 1 of the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms. For example, is the infringement minimally impairing of the right? Is the infringement proportionate? First, requiring a 1-meter mowed buffer is not a minimal impairment of a homeowner's charter right to freedom of expression. Picture most urban yards, especially those of newer homes such as townhouses. Imposing a 1-meter requirement will mostly deny those homeowners their right to have a naturalized garden. Now let's look at the proportionality. Proportionality is a fundamental principle of public law that requires administrative action and legislative measures to be no more restrictive than necessary to achieve a legitimate aim. What legitimate aim of the municipality is at stake here? Mr. Barkway told me the aim was to prevent native plants from spreading into adjoining properties. That a 1-meter buffer would prevent this simply defies the biology of plants, which spread their seeds by wind, by water, by being excreted by animals, by being carried on their fur, or being buried by them. Some plants also spread by underground rhizomes. A 1-meter mowed buffer will not prevent any of this. Also, is it legitimate to make a law whose aim is to prevent the spread of native plants, plants that belong here and that have evolved here over millions of years to support the local ecosystem and the wildlife it sustains, while the town has no law to prevent highly invasive non-native plants such as creeping jenny, periwinkle, English ivy, and goutweed, among many others, all of which are commonly sold in nurseries and planted in gardens all over town. Conservation authorities and managers of other natural areas have spent millions trying to remove these dangerous invaders from their lands that smother the local flora and starve local creatures. I put it to you that adjoining properties are at a greater risk from any of those plants than they are from brown-eyed Susans, trilliums, or bluebells. While the town's bylaw treats the native plants that belong here as some kind of dangerous threat, other municipalities have embraced naturalized gardens as part of their biodiversity strategy, or simply because they recognize that healthy environments improve human health and well-being. Hamilton has a biodiversity action plan, and they are actively working with community partners to protect, restore, connect, and explore biodiversity in their municipality. In Prince Edward County, for instance, turf grass must be maintained below 20 centimeters, but natural areas are exempt. Toronto offers grants of up to $5,000 to people or groups who create biodiverse landscapes on their properties. In discussing the Supreme Court decision, lawyer Edward Peghin said the main takeaway is evidence, not aesthetics. Municipalities can regulate for safety, fire risk, and invasive species, but must justify tailored limits with proof. I believe part of the solution is to update the town's definition of a naturalized garden, one that includes a definition of ornamental plants, and that includes the concept of human maintenance. I strongly believe that the bylaw as proposed would not withstand a court challenge. I suggest that this bylaw be brought to the working group so a solution can be found that brings our current bylaw into compliance with the recent Supreme Court decision and laws that have been in place here since 1996. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Benyon. Do members of committee have any questions for our delegation? Councillor Renchma, please go ahead.
Thank you, Chair Murray, and thank you for your presentation, Ms. Benyon. So I have a couple of questions. I read through your letter and I read through the proposed bylaw changes, and I used to be a kind of a gardening addict in the past, and not in the last like 7 or 8 years, but I know a lot of what you're talking about. You know, when you see periwinkle and goutweed, I've had both those plants, and I've seen how goutweed take over an entire bank up at my ex-husband's parents' cottage. It was just everywhere, and it had taken over. I've had goutweed myself, and it just takes over. So I understand what you're saying when you say that. I also understand what you're saying about that plants propagate through the air, through animals' feet, through the wind and all that. So, and I kind of understand that the town's position that there needs to be a buffer, because I understand how those things are viewed, right? My question for you is, what about, let's say I was a person that was concerned about ticks, and there was some tall, naturalized gardens right next to me with no buffer. I think there's okay, so I'm just going to throw something in there. I think there's a 20-centimeter limit anyway on all of it, but that was a question I was going to ask later on when the report comes forward. But if I was somebody that was concerned about ticks and there was a naturalized garden next door with no buffer or with a buffer, do I have anything to be concerned about?
So if you give me some more time, I can give you some more places where you can go for information, but I looked up some things today. So if you go to the David Suzuki website, and I can give you the link for that, it has an article that says more biodiversity, fewer ticks. And it explains that long grass, just long grass, and turf grass are both good habitats for ticks. They especially like edge environments. But if you have a lot of different varieties of plants, so if you have good biodiversity on your property, you're likely to have less ticks. Mm-hmm. So that's one thing. But another thing that's interesting is one of the key host plants for ticks is Japanese barberry. And it's not because they eat the plant or eat anything on the plant. It's just because Japanese barberry creates a good, humid environment and safe environment for them. Japanese barberry is widely planted all over this community. It's actually a favorite of developers because it's a hardy little shrub that you can stick almost anywhere and it'll grow. Mm-hmm. And it is everywhere in this community. Mm-hmm. And that is sort of a tick magnet.
I used to have that.
So I think
it's
got little barbs on it.
Yeah,
barbs. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So what I would say is a native garden isn't necessarily more tick-prone than other places. In fact, just for an example, the Japanese barberry that I was talking about, it says it can host 12 times more ticks than other areas, places where barberry is growing, making removal a key tick management strategy. And we have them all over the city, all over the town.
Okay. Okay, I might have more questions for you after, but that's it for now, Madam Chair. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor. Councillor Miklik, please go ahead.
Thank you very much, through you to Liz Bennion. Pretty impressive document that you've prepared here. Lots of information, citing legal. Certainly, you know your stuff when it comes to this sort of subject matter. So I want to ask you about that 1 meter buffer zone. You don't seem to feel or believe that that's appropriate or that's the right solution. But like when I read, like I took some time and looked at other bylaws that pertain to this in other municipalities, it seems to be pretty standard. So what are your thoughts are with respect to that being pretty standard amongst other municipalities, and I think including Mississauga that this is based out of? What sort of solution do you propose instead to address this?
So when I wrote this up, it's less a personal objection than the fact that I don't think it will stand up in court, given the recent Supreme Court decision. There's a charter right that is embedded. You have freedom of expression, and that includes having natural gardens or not natural gardens, whatever kind of gardens you like. It's protected. It's a charter protection, freedom of expression. So it's not, the case I'm making isn't about my personal beliefs on this. It's about, we just had a recent Supreme Court decision that said there is a charter right to have natural gardens, and it can't be impinged on for all the reasons that I stated. So I think that 1 meter buffer is not proportionate and not justified, and I don't think it would stand up in court. In terms of, what's been common, yes, a lot of municipalities have had these kind of rules about you have to have some kind of buffer. That doesn't mean that it would stand up to a court challenge now, given the most recent Supreme Court decision. What is the solution? I don't know that there's a problem. One of the things that the court made clear is that aesthetics don't count. So I might not like my neighbor's house has been painted purple, but I can't do anything about that, right? Just as an example. So I might not like somebody's gout weed, but I can't tell them they can't have it. And they might not like a natural garden, but it's that person's right to freedom of expression. So that's what I would say to that. I mean,
No, that's what I'm asking.
I think the solution is educating people about what the law is.
Perfect. No, next question. So like in reviewing this bylaw, I believe this bylaw is to address this court decision that was recently made earlier this year. So in your opinion, do you think that this bylaw and its current proposal, do you think it's satisfactory to get us out of or to manage the current situation that we find ourselves in with respect to this ruling?
I don't think the 1 meter mode buffer would stand up in court.
Okay. Or this bylaw?
Well, that's in the current bylaw.
All right.
That's in the bylaw that's, the amended bylaw that's being proposed. Just to be clear, that 1 meter mode buffer was something that's always been in your bylaw.
Mm-hmm.
It just happened to
Nobody
come to
picked
my
up on it
attention
yet.
because it was coming to council tonight. If I'd realized it was in there before, I might have complained before, but I didn't have a Supreme Court ruling to make the argument to you.
And third question, last question. You're part of the Urban Forest Working Group. You're part of this, I thought it was tree bylaw. I thought like you're, would something like this, do you think, is something that your group would be able to look at or be able to review to perhaps tweak or address this down the road? Maybe not necessarily tonight with what's proposed, but, to create amendments that would give it more strength?
I think it would be a good place to look this over, because one of the things that the working group has done is we have reviewed best practices from other municipalities. We did that for a whole range of urban forest issues. And you might recall that the working group started in November of 2023. By December of 2023, the working group committee had prepared a report looking at best practices across 14 different areas of urban forest management. And the working group has kind of been working from that document that we put together in a month with, looking at 14 different areas with examples from many different municipalities. So doing that kind of research is something that I would be happy to do. I'm sure the working group would be willing to work on that. And we could do it quickly. I mean, this is only one little thing. It's only one little piece of the bylaw, and it would really not take much time to do the research.
Okay, terrific. I think we need to do something tonight because the grass is growing. I'm cutting my lawn twice a week. And if we would be looking at this in November, it might be a different story, but.
Could I also just say that
Sure.
There's no problem with having turf grass cut to 20 centimeters or less. That's not the issue here. The issue is solely the mowed buffer for natural gardens. Turf grass should be maintained at 20 centimeters or less. That's not an issue.
Thank you very much, Councillor Merkel. Councillor Russell, please go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Through you to Ms. Bennion. I like the idea of a naturalized garden, and again, I think there are a lot of benefits, again, outlined in your letter and from previous discussions. Where I have a little bit of concern is where a naturalized garden starts to blend into an idea of just an unkept yard. And how do we differentiate between the two if there is no buffer allowed or if there's no proportionality in terms of the space of the actual yard itself?
The bylaws that I've looked at, they have very good definitions of what a naturalized garden is. A lot of times there's something in that definition about maintenance, that you can't just have an unmaintained area that's just growing wild. There has to be, a human intervention in removing noxious weeds, for example. So I think it's about putting in good definitions. Although I just looked at Mississauga's most recent change, and they've just gotten rid of that. They just talk about turf grass. They don't even try and distinguish between naturalized gardens and any other kind of garden. And I think that's kind of what the Supreme Court was going for.
Okay. Through you, Madam Chair. What about, again, based on the research you've done, how would that impact the road allowance and the town-owned property that, again, goes up a portion of the person's yard? Would that need to be mowed?
Of course, that would have no effect on that because that's about safety. And so I'm not concerned about that, and that's in the bylaw, and that's clear, and that makes sense. We're talking about when one person's garden who happens to plant native plants goes up to the fence of their neighbor that has a different kind of garden. That's the areas we're talking about.
Okay, so very specific, defined areas in someone's yard that can be naturalized, as opposed to the entire yard itself.
No, I think when you start, again, I think that would go against a Supreme Court ruling. If you start trying to say you have to be confined to a certain area, I think that would not meet the test of the Supreme Court ruling. However, safety is a different thing. So requiring setbacks from driveways and roads for sightline issues, that's a safety issue, and that would be fine. That is fine.
Okay, and last question, Madam Chair? Yes. That might have been three. What about commercial property? Would they be allowed to utilize the same strategy to not keep their property maintained?
I think we need a constitutional lawyer here to answer. I don't know.
No, it's just you've done the most research, so that's why I ask you.
So I'm not sure. Charter rights apply to humans like people. I don't think in this country we apply person rights to corporations.
Okay. No, I thank you for that.
Thank you, Councillor Russell. Mayor Easton, please go ahead.
Thank you very much. Thanks, Liz, for bringing this forward. Thanks for coming and delegating it. We do appreciate having people from the community come into the meetings. It makes a difference when you're talking face to face. A couple of things. Differentiating between naturalized gardens in terms of plant type. And I mean, it's kind of sprinkled through here, and it's certainly part of your presentation, although it's not your main point. So are we Have we reached a point where we need to do more educating? Because certainly you can go to the nursery and you can find everything under the sun, including one plant that I really like, which is lily of the valley, which my family tell me is bad news. I shouldn't have it in my garden. So anyway, are we also going to start to continue to educate people? Because I think you and a number of other people have been trying to educate people about what should be on that good plant list. So you're obviously going to continue to do that, but should our bylaw contain that kind of thing?
I think it needs to be in a bylaw. Trying to force people to plant one plant over the other, again, that kind of goes against the freedom of expression in the charter. So I don't think you can force people. I think you can educate people. I certainly agree with that, and I do try and do my best with that. And we try and do it here at the town of Lincoln through some of the gardens we've planted, through the Miyawaki Mini Forest, through the Val Fleming Butterfly Garden, some of the other gardens that the town is involved in planning and planting right now. So I think education is important, but I don't think you can force people to plant certain things over other things.
Okay. Let's talk just briefly about standard practices versus best practice. And I think that those words are used in both the bylaw as well as your own notes. So what are we trying to achieve here? Standard practice is not to be the best approach. Is best practice then a matter of definition again?
I think we should always be striving for best practices. Best practices are constantly evolving by their very nature, right? So municipalities, for instance, will implement a bylaw and then find that there are better ways of doing things. And so I think the best way, like any business would do, you look around at your competitors, you see what they're doing well, you try and bring your standard up to them. And I think that's what municipalities have to do too. There are other municipalities that have already done some of this work. I think if we look at what Mississauga is doing in light of this most recent decision, we might find some answers there. But I think there are a lot of good examples out there that we could learn from.
Okay. When we spoke earlier today, I asked you about how much time it would take to do the research that would be required to potentially bring a different level of clarity to this bylaw. Could you just talk a little bit more about that?
Again, because this is such a specific thing, it's just the 1 meter rule around native gardens, I think it wouldn't take more than a month. So if you said you wanted more research on it, the committee members could work on that, and by our next meeting next month, we could have something.
Okay. Thank you very much. So, Madam Clerk, or Madam Chair, it seems that we need, if it's the pleasure of the committee to have further discussion, we should have some input, I think, from staff about how that further discussion should take place, and I hope we would be able to do that tonight as well.
I think it's my understanding that when we review the report, we'll have an opportunity for that at that time.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you. And seeing no further questions, thank you very much. Oh, sorry, no, Councillor Brunet slipped in there. All right, Councillor Brunet, please go ahead.
Thank you, Chair Murray. I'm just wondering, through you, Chair, if maybe our Director of Planning who oversees bylaw, or maybe our bylaw officer, I think it'd probably be more appropriate for Matt, but I'll let them decide. So in Ms. Benyon's update to council, she believes that part of the solution is to update the town's definition of a naturalized garden. I'm just wondering, through Chair, if Mr. Bruder could maybe comment as to whether that is something that he feels under his jurisdiction that he's willing to entertain. This is something that's something that needs to be addressed. So I'd like to see what he has to say about that.
Sorry, Councillor, I think we're going to be hearing from our bylaw department.
Okay, on the report?
During the report.
Fair enough.
If we can capture that at
Absolutely.
that point, I think that's great.
Perfect,
Thank you.
perfect. Thank you.
Councillor Renchma, please go ahead.
Thank you, Chair Mary. I just have one more question. We were talking earlier on, Ms. Benyon, you were saying that it's difficult to tell people what they can and can't plant. So how would that, so at one time it was, you were not allowed to buy, I can't remember the name of the plant, purple something. Huh? No, that's a bad one too. No, it's a nice plant that a lot of people have, but you weren't allowed to buy it at one point because it was bringing plum pox into the country. What's that called? Purple smoke bush? Is that it? Yeah. Yep, sand cherry, that was it. So is that the sort of ideal way to regulate what types of plants should and shouldn't be planted? If they're clearly a danger to, I guess, native plants, and clearly a definition to agriculture, or clearly a problem for agriculture, and clearly a problem to human health, like that crazy one that's it's also mentioned in your letter. I can't remember what it's called. Hogweed.
Yeah.
Hogweed. So
Yeah,
is it-
hogweed came in through the horticultural trades, so. Yeah, it would be. It would be good if we had strong regulation. There are advocacy groups working to try and get the government to put regulation in against especially dangerous plants, but also just invasive plants in general. We're not there. We just don't have the regulations in place right now.
But, so just for clarification, earlier on, you were saying it's very difficult or maybe unadvisable to tell people what they should and shouldn't plant. So do we sort of leave it? So I'm wondering what your suggestion would be to avoid having plants that are potentially dangerous to agriculture, dangerous to people, if we aren't doing it at the municipal level, and it's maybe not happening at the federal level.
Yeah, so I think, back to what I said to the mayor, I think education is the key. Just for example, Tree of Heaven is an invasive tree, and it is a host plant for the spotted lanternfly, which is a huge danger to fruit trees and to grapes. And it's recommended if you have a Tree of Heaven on your property that you should remove it. But I don't know how much education there's been on that. And I don't know, I haven't seen too much on it. I see it because I'm doing the work that I'm doing, but I don't think the public knows how to spot one of those trees or how to remove one of those trees. And so, yes, there needs to be a lot more education, and we do need regulation, and I'm hoping that the advocacy groups that are working on that with the government can get it. But in the meantime, I think it's about education. That's what we can do. Now, just one other thing. You do have in your bylaw, and I totally agree with it, there's a list of noxious plants that have to be removed by people if they're on their property, things like poison oak and sumac and hogweed, giant hogweed. And that's good and appropriate because those things are dangerous to people.
Turned my mic off accidentally, Madam Chair, but I'm done. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you very much, Councillor. Councillor Russell, please go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. One more quick question. Just because, again, I know you've done a ton of research on this. Do any of the municipalities that you've looked at have a permit process as part of this where they have to go through certain regulations to make sure that they are adhering to all of the things that they should be adhering to in order to maintain and keep that naturalized area? And again, have some recourse for the municipality to come back that if they're not adhering to it, that they could possibly remove it.
Certainly some municipalities did try and regulate it like that. That wouldn't stand up to the Supreme Court, the recent Supreme Court ruling, because you're trying to regulate people who are planting native plants. You're not regulating people who are planting other kinds of plants. It's not, it wouldn't stand up to a court hearing.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you very much. I'm just looking to make sure nobody had anything else to say. Thank you very much for joining us, Liz. At this point, there being no further delegations, I have a motion moved by Councillor Russell that committee receive and file for information the delegation from Liz Benyon regarding maintenance of lands bylaw amendments PD-10-26. I will now ask our deputy clerk to open that vote.
Thank you, Chair. The vote is now open. May I have your vote, Councillor Rajima?
I'm in favor.
The vote is now closed, and that carries.
Thank you very much, Lindsay. We will now consider item 7.2.1, Maintenance of Lands Bylaw Amendment, PD-10-26. Our Manager of Municipal Law Enforcement will provide comments. Mr. Barkway, please go ahead.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair, Mayor, and Council. I appreciate taking the time to hear me out on the proposed amendments, the draft amendments to the land maintenance bylaw that we have in Lincoln. This comes as a result of Ruck versus Mississauga, as was identified in the delegation Superior Court of Ontario decision. Mississauga and a landowner over several years contesting the enforcement of their land maintenance bylaw. And the concerns that came out of that towards the city were in respect to two specific sections, 5 and 6 of their bylaw, which was the height and what they're deeming to be nuisance weeds within their bylaw. Those were the two major areas that were spoken to. As a result, I had conversations with multiple municipalities, the local area municipalities, and I reviewed some other bylaws as well from other municipalities to see the route that was being taken, what best practices were currently. And I identified within our bylaw that we do have a naturalized area mentioned within our Clean Yards bylaw. It's been there since, and this is 2019 was the bylaw. It is mentioned within there, but there's no real clear definition of or it wasn't expanded upon definition of what a naturalized area was. And I felt it necessary to clarify that within the amendments. I also wanted to clarify that the naturalized area wouldn't be permitted within the boulevard area. That's to mitigate public safety risk for sight lines, which was also spoken to as well. I also noticed that within our Clean Yards bylaw, the mention of noxious weeds was prevalent. And when I reviewed the Weed Control Act of Ontario and the list of noxious weeds, it was clarified in 2002, I believe, that noxious weeds list really pertains to agricultural properties or the impact on agricultural properties, not so much in a residential area or an urban area. But it does appear that most municipalities do refer to the Noxious Weeds Act for all properties. I've had conversation with multiple municipalities, and they look like they were, the best practice was to move away from just a blanket of the noxious weeds and go to weeds or identify prohibited weeds, ones that would be a health risk or a safety risk. So those are identified within the amendments of the bylaw as well. And I will speak to the fact that, yes, the bylaw that's currently in place also has mention of buffer strips and perimeter strips for residential, all zone lands. All I did in the amendments was to define what a buffer strip or a perimeter strip was. I didn't add them to the bylaw. They were already present, and I was merely trying to clarify what those were. My attempt in this, in the amendments, was to explore the ability of one homeowner to the freedom of expression and the other, an adjoining property owner with an freedom of expression. And my officers, myself, we see it every day. One property owner may have a nice manicured golf green type of property, and an adjoining property may not, and may want to go more the route of a naturalized area. My view in regards to the buffer strip or perimeter strip was to keep something that delineates from one property to another, and to slow the risk of transference of weeds or unwanted vegetative growth or pests from one property to another. So that adjoining property owner may have some time to see something's coming and growing into their property. They'd have some time to take some steps on their own property to do that. So with that, I'll leave that open for questions.
Thank you very much, Mr. Barkway. Are there any questions from committee? Councillor Renchema, please go ahead.
Thank you. So I've read through things a little bit, and I'm a little bit confused about definitions of some things. So I'll ask the question sort of I'll try to make it as clear for myself as possible, but through you, Madam Chair. So is it true that whether the garden falls under the definition of naturalized garden or whether it's turf grass or what we all know as a lawn, in the existing bylaw and proposed bylaw can't be taller than 20 centimeters, whether it's naturalized or not?
Through you, Chair. No, currently, if it's a naturalized area or naturalized garden, that wouldn't fall under the height restriction of 20 centimeters.
Okay. All right, thank you. And I also have a question about, you mentioned boulevard area. So I think that's a zoning term, but I'm not sure. But if I have a home and a sidewalk traverses my front lawn, would it be required, and I wanted to do my front lawn as a naturalized garden, would it be required that that naturalized garden have a 1.6 meter buffer from the sidewalk? Or where would that buffer start and stop?
Through you, Chair. Good question. My interpretation of this would be that the boulevard area would create that buffer strip between the road itself and the property. It's not asking that a 1 meter buffer strip between the sidewalk and the house be in place. We're talking letter of the law and spirit of the law. The spirit of the law isn't to cause people to restrict what they can have when they want to express themselves, but the road allowance is between the sidewalk and the roadway, and for sightline issues, we have to keep that under 20 centimeters. So myself and my officers, we would deem that to be the buffer strip area. We would allow that as being a buffer strip on the property.
Okay. I could just picture, to ask a further question of that, I could just picture that it might be a concern if there were tall grasses and tall naturalized items sort of up against the sidewalk for people in the community. They're walking their dog, they're concerned about ticks, even though what we've heard about ticks. But so maybe that's a zoning question. If there's a sidewalk and I have grass or a naturalized garden somewhere within the vicinity of that sidewalk, is there going to be some sort of a setback that I need to maintain between the sidewalk and my naturalized garden?
Through you, Madam Chair, maybe I'll jump in here and try to help answer. So I think when we're talking about the boulevard, as you know, Councillor, it's not really a zoning term, but it's just a general road allowance term. A lot of the times when you think about boulevard, you think about that grassed area kind of in between the sidewalk and the edge of the road. Sometimes even the boulevard extends a little bit past the sidewalk on the property owner's side as well. It really varies. So we didn't prescribe anything specific in terms of a distance when we talk about the boulevard, but really what we're talking about is the right-of-way more than anything else, and trying to keep that from a safety point of view clear of long vegetation for visibility reasons. Hopefully that clarifies.
So generally it's about 10 feet from the road, generally, right? So
Generally.
So nothing within that 10 feet can have anything taller than 20 centimeters. So I'm wondering, can I ask another question, Madam Chair? Okay, this is actually clarification on that, but I will come out after this and go back in. Does it make sense to you to have some sort of something in this bylaw that prevents, to either one of you, that prevents a naturalized garden sort of right abutting a sidewalk regardless of where that sidewalk sits within that 10 feet area?
Through you, Chair. Thank you for the question. We get complaints of overhanging branches, shrubs that are encroaching on the sidewalk. That's enforced. We would speak to the property owner and have that trimmed back. So if that becomes an issue, that would be something that same as we would with any other part of our Clean Yards bylaw, we could approach the property owner, have them clear it. It can't impede onto the sidewalk, much like a vehicle can't impede the sidewalk. So same thing with anything else that would impede the passageway or the safe passage of
Sorry,
anybody.
I'm having a little trouble hearing. I heard most of what you said. So I didn't mean to interrupt you, I just couldn't hear you, so.
My apologies, is that better?
It is.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we would enforce that, myself and my officer would enforce that the same way we do currently with our Clean Yards bylaw and property standards. Nothing can encroach over the sidewalk, much like a vehicle can't be parked over a sidewalk. So we would look at the same way. It's a safety issue, it's an impediment. In the winter, we have things that are grown over onto the sidewalk and then it's iced over. We have the property owners clear that off the sidewalk and clear that away, so it's a clear passageway for pedestrians. So that
Okay.
would be done.
Thank you. I was thinking more just literally just things up against the sidewalk and you're walking your dog and you're walking along, it's brushing against your coat. I could just see that being a concern for people. So not trying to create any more changes to the bylaw, but I wanted clarification on that and your opinion. Thank you, Madam Chair. That's it for me for now.
Thank you very much, Councillor Njima. Councillor Timmers, please go ahead.
Thank you very much. So, great information tonight from the delegation, and thank you for that. I've read through this a number of times now, and it's not getting any clearer to me. So I really do agree that the naturalized area definition needs to be a little more clear. I'm having a hard time understanding exactly what it refers to. I like that the noxious weeds, that's a whole different thing. They're all listed, that's great. But I think we need to have a little more information there. And I'm also, through you to Mr. Barkway, I'm having trouble with all these buffer zones. So I heard a meter buffer, and now I see in the bylaw a 5 meter from the front of the house or the rear of the house. And then I'm also seeing a 1.6 meter buffer, I'm assuming between our property and the abutting property, which is 5 feet, 24 inches. That's a big buffer if you only have a small residential lot. I don't know, Mr. Barkway, if you could just clarify for me, I'm having a hard time understanding. If you have a really small property and you put this naturalized garden off of the back of your house, and then you've got to cut all these buffer areas. So if you could just clarify it for me, I'd appreciate it.
Through you, Chair. Thank you for the question. So in a residential area, it would be 1.6 meters or 5.2 feet. And in all other zones, there would be a buffer strip or a perimeter strip of 5 meters, which is 16.4. I'll advise that currently within our bylaw for all other zones, it's 10 meters, which is about 32 feet. So it's actually reducing that for the agricultural or commercial properties for a buffer strip.
Okay, thank you. Sorry, if you could just repeat that. So in an agricultural property, what is the buffer between agricultural to a residential property?
In all other zones, which would include agricultural, it would be 5 meters, which is 16 point, I'm proposing 5 meters, which is 16.4 feet from all adjacent lands or along, adjacent to the road allowance.
So was this originally, through you, Chair, was this originally a meter? Is this an increase then? Where am I getting the meter from? Was it not a meter originally?
Originally for all other zones, like agricultural zones, it was 10 meters. I've reduced it to 5 meters.
Okay. All right. Okay, thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Timmers. Councillor Mikulik, please go ahead.
Thank you very much. Through you to Mike. What about condominium associations? What about those sorts of associations when it comes to their rules within their organization or their HOA rules and that sort of thing? Like, this isn't going to be any of our business to deal with that within themselves, is it? Like, their responsibility is the 1 meter around their property. Whatever goes on inside, we're not going to be asked to enforce anything in that private area, just to be clear on that.
Through you, Madam Chair, maybe I'll take a first crack at this one. Generally speaking, whether it's condominium or it's, somebody that owns a single detached dwelling, you're treated the same as an owner of the property. So when you're talking about residential land uses, that's the provisions of the bylaw that apply to that residential use. Mr. Barkway was talking about any other uses other than residential in the buffers that Councillor Timmers was talking about, and then there's buffer for residential. That would be, the same rules would apply just because that's residential land use that applies to it. So that's how we would treat them. It would just be dealing with, you know, a condominium corporation or entity like that. That's assumed those responsibilities rather than a single property owner for a single detached dwelling or townhouse.
Fair enough. It's similar to, like, let's say, that Red Maple development in Jordan Station. That's a large condominium, and if they start popping up with these naturalized gardens, neighbors won't be asking us as a municipality to step in there and enforce any bylaws amongst themselves there. That's what I just want to clarify. Some of these condominium associations, they're not just bordering outside, they're pretty large within themselves, or Heritage Village, or say Cherry Heights, these sorts of places.
Through you, Madam Chair. I see where you're going now, Councillor, and there's one distinction. When you look, and what piqued me was when you talked about that particular condominium development, because when you establish a condominium, you're establishing ownership of each individual lots. For those, the property owners would be on board, but the condominium corporation maintains, generally speaking, the common elements pieces. For those, that you would deal with the condominium corporation. For the others, you would deal with the individual owners, because it's still, depending on the type of condominium model that they go with, but in that one, they still are owners of the respective, we could call them lots for all intents and purposes, but we would still deal with them individually. And then anything associated with the common elements pieces, the pieces that don't fall under those individual ownerships, that would be the condo corporation we deal with.
Okay. Again, like, it's just to make sure we know what our boundaries are as a municipality when it comes to enforcement. So, next question with respect to these ornamental grasses that people are growing along their sidewalks to probably prevent dogs from going on their front lawns. They create these boundaries, they encroach onto sidewalks. Do we take a proactive or a reactive approach to enforcement when it comes to officers seeing that sort of thing on sidewalks? Do we wait for residents to make a phone call and complain, or do we take a look and say, wow, okay, those grasses are getting out of control, maybe we should step in there and say something?
Through you, Chair. Thank you for the question. My straightforward answer would be both. For that, typically it's a reactive approach, but I would say that the officers, as they're driving around, if they do see something that's a glaring health concern or a safety hazard, they would be addressing that immediately. So.
Okay. And then last question. We talked earlier about possibly this working group tweaking, taking a look at, working with. Is there any, should we consider that moving forward down the road? Like, in addition to what we're proposing to address tonight to take care of the immediate concern, should we look at this working group? Should they be interested or available to tweak or work further amendments?
Through you, Madam Chair, I mean, absolutely, Councillor. I think there have been some good points raised tonight. Definitely some takeaways for staff, maybe some things to look further into. We can do things a bunch of different ways. As you know, with bylaws, generally speaking, these are documents, these are frameworks that they're updated from time to time. They're not static necessarily where, you pass one iteration of one and that's it. We've all seen them. There's multiple amendments, additions, subtractions, trying to be flexible. We're willing to do that here and continue conversations. We're really in committee's hands. We're also prepared, again, recognizing that there has been some good points raised. We don't mind taking these points away and coming back to you as well. That's another option. Potentially with some of these things hashed out a little bit further. I've heard a couple of times around the table that there's a little bit of unclearness, for lack of a better term, on certain aspects. So we're definitely willing to put in the work, and we can move forward in either of those directions.
Terrific. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor. Councillor Russell, please go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Again, maybe just a quick question to Director Bruder and Mr. Barkway. Do you think there's any merit in looking through a permit process, or is it just unneeded red tape?
Through you, Madam Chair. It's just, when you get into something like that, I feel like there could be potentially a little bit of subjectivity. There could be differing things. It could be some site-specific, things that need to be considered. I would shy away from it too, also from a little bit of a resource perspective too. Could be difficult to administer. As our delegation had mentioned, some others have tried it. First of all, there is the issue that we would have to clarify in terms of would it stand up in the first place. Presuming that would be the case, I could see a lot of other administrative challenges that come along with it. So if I'm honest, speaking with everyone here, it wouldn't be my first option.
Okay, thank you.
We're going to go to Councillor Patriva online. Please go ahead.
Thank you, Chair, and through you to Mr. Barkway. Mike, did you say you were going to reduce the buffer in the agricultural zone?
Through you, Chair. Yes, my intent was to reduce it from 10 meters to 5 meters.
Okay, so I got a big issue with that because you know that we've had problems in the agricultural zone with speculators who buy properties and, let the grass grow to 10 feet. And then we just cut the strip around the outside. And meanwhile, God knows what's growing on the inside. So you've got a farmer, we're supposed to be the Center for Excellence in Agriculture. You've got a farmer tending to his crops, on either side. And then you've got God knows what growing in the middle. So, I think that just that cutting of the strip around the outside isn't enough. That the whole property should be maintained like anyone else. We're allowing these scofflaws to get away with murder and, hope the buildings fall down and what. So, yeah, I am not in for a reduction in that at all.
Through you, Chair. Thank you for the statement. I do hear what you're saying in regards to having a property owner, an agricultural property, cut their land, the entire land. There are not many municipalities who order agricultural properties to clear their entire land. And I would suggest that if a agricultural operation, a farmer is deemed to have a field remain vacant for a year for overgrowth and then to turn that over to get the benefits from what they've let grow into that soil. I think to then order them to regularly and routinely maintain the entire property, you could be talking 100 acres, 5,000 acres that you'd wish a property owner to cut on a regular basis. I think cutting a perimeter strip is a balance between having something done and having everything done for that property owner. You're talking about a lot of extra incurred costs for 100 acres to be cut all the time if you want that done for an entire season.
Okay, well then I guess we're going to have to tend to disagree because if we're the Center for Excellence in Agriculture, we should have different rules. Mike, you were involved with some of these issues with these, decrepit farms and how long it took and maintenance, and you drive by them and they're still, a mess. So I'd like you to take a look at that further. So thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Councillor. Councillor Brunet, please go ahead.
Thank you, Chair Murray. So through you to the manager of bylaw. So Mike, I just wanted to go back to your report on page 3 under the bullet point naturalized areas. So I just wanted you to clarify, we heard, in your preamble with regards to the report that you'd reached out to municipalities and talked to, people like, for example, the city of Oakville. And you talked about, in this bullet point, you referred to, while the bylaw does identify the term naturalized area and permits such areas, it does not specify the location or limits or naturalized areas. This creates enforcement challenges. So in the delegation's information, and she highlighted this, that in her opinion, she feels that, we need a clear definition of a naturalized garden. And I want to take out the word garden because it seems like there's a whole lot of different definitions here, like just a naturalized area. And, in your opinion, like, what are the issues here? Like, is this what it's coming down to you and your officers? Is it just this ambiguity with regards to enforcement? I'm just looking for some clarity here because on one hand, it seems like we're arguing about definitions and we're talking about naturalized area, and we've got kind of a subject expert here thinking that this should be, a definition, and yet from a bylaw perspective, you're looking at this differently. So I just like maybe if you could just, comment, to the actual wording there in your report in terms of moving forward, what the big issues are for your department in this specific area.
Through you, Chair. Thank you very much. Yes, the intent on that is just to clarify that a naturalized area can be across a person's property. But it to be bordered by the perimeter strip to have it maintained within the property itself. In the naturalized area, I don't have the original bylaw, but I included that it's an area of vegetation deliberately planted or cultivated with one or more species of wildflowers, shrubs, annuals, perennials, ornamental grasses, or a combination of these, but does not include a noxious weed or hazardous weed that is monitored and maintained by the owner occupant of land. So we had an explanation in our bylaw already, but I didn't deem it to be sufficient, and I wanted it to be something that a property owner can look at and do something on their property with, but then my officers can also look at and say, this was something that was deliberately planted, or are they just letting their lawn overgrow into whatever, and let whatever comes up in the lawn be deemed to be a naturalized area. So the intent was just to clarify it, but let property owners have that freedom of expression while not negatively impacting or believed to be negatively impacting in the neighboring properties either.
So again, just for clarity, so based on that response, am I to garner that you feel that to work for a clear definition would be something that is of no value to your department?
Through you, Chair, I don't believe that's what I was saying.
I'm not trying to put words in your mouth. I'm just trying to understand exactly.
I believe that there should be a clear definition, and if we can work towards a great definition of a naturalized area, I would take that. I felt with what I gleaned from other municipalities, this would be sufficient, but if it's not being deemed to be sufficient, we can work at that and get a more robust definition if you wish that.
Okay, so you would support the work to get a clear definition?
Absolutely.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Brunei. Councillor Renchema, please go ahead.
Oh, thank you, Madam Chair. So I would like to put a motion forward that the bylaw be reviewed and that in consultation with the committee and in
Councillor Renchema, sorry, can I
Yes.
interrupt?
Yep.
Could we have Councillor Reimer, who has not yet had an opportunity to speak to this. Could we have him speak before you put a motion forward?
Yes, absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor Reimer, please go ahead.
Thank you, Chair Murray, and thank you, Councillor Njima, for that. Thanks for the report, Mike. Just a question to pick up on the concern that Councillor Pachariva brought up with regards to ag. I think there needs to be I agree the 3 meter buffer zone or 5 meters doesn't matter in an ag setting. The stuff that comes out of unkept orchards or fire blight and berry moth, that kind of stuff, it doesn't matter what the strip is. But my concern would be we do have an appendix that states prohibited weeds and plant lists. So I'm not talking. I'm applying this now to rural settings and agriculture, not to an urban setting. But is it a possibility, and I say this realizing that enforcement, that's my second question is about enforcement costs, but is it possible then to take that list and include, plants that, with some agricultural input that are a hindrance? Because I do know that adds to costs. So when you have certain, especially grapes, and they're bordering on an unkept tree line or, a property that hasn't been, I realize, there's a natural part to it, but when things are natural, there's also other stuff that's allowed to grow in there that is detrimental to the crops. Is it possible to add, something into that list that would help out in the ag setting? So if that's allowed to be, you have a 10-acre farm that's allowed to be natural, but we could still have some type of say in plants and weeds that would grow in there that are going to blow over into the neighbors and affect their crops. Am I making myself clear, Mike, or can you comment on that?
Yes, through you, Chair. Great point. And I agree with you. I think what should be applied to the agricultural properties would be the Noxious Weeds Act under the Weed Control Act of Ontario. And that would deal with the identified weeds through the Weed Control Act that are detrimental to agricultural operations. On top of that, we also have the abandoned orchards bylaw. So when we have a complaint about a fruit tree orchard or an old vineyard that hasn't been maintained, we actually have the authority. We go onto that property and we actually get an inspector with OMAFRA to come down. They inspect it, and if it's deemed to be diseased, then we use the Weed Control Act and we issue an order for the property owner to then remove all the diseased vines or trees from the property so that they don't impede on or impact on the neighboring properties.
Thank you, Mike. One more comment, another question, if I may, Chair Murray. I would support a pause. I'm not sure I see a drawback to pressing pause and taking another look at this to seek more clarity. And along those lines, if that was to happen, every time we put up our hand, quite often when we put up our hand in support of something or against something, there's a dollar figure that aligns with that. And sometimes we tend to forget that come budget season. Is there, to you, Mike, is there a difference in, and it's hard to differentiate between two of these because we're taking what the proposed bylaw is and perhaps something that we would formulate later. But either way, there's time, involved for you to enforce this. Doesn't matter what happens. Is there one is there one that stands out to you that takes a lot more time to you? I know we had Councillor Russell brought up, and it was mentioned about a permit, and that for my way that adds another layer of time. Right? Time is money. So is there one of these that would stand out to you, Mike, as something that says, if this was to happen, this involves quite a bit more oversight by my officers, or is there that difference in there at all in any of these scenarios that were sort of thrown around here tonight? Through you, Chair Murray.
Through you, Chair. Thank you. I would agree. I think the one that would create the largest amount of extra work and time and staffing would be if we were to try to implement or look at implementing a permitting system for naturalized areas. Otherwise, I think the amendments, however they go, the enforcement will still be able to be done in the same way that the officers are doing so now and do it effectively. So,
okay. Thank you, Mike. Thank you, Chair Murray.
Mayor Easton, please go ahead.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Through you to Mr. Barkway, we've covered a very wide swath of application here, which I am concerned about it. The issue of having that 30 feet buffer along the edges of farmland has been debated extensively at the regional level. It's all about runoff, and there's also the issue of the loss of crop production. So I would be very concerned that we would build the specifics of that into this bylaw without considering what other language is included in other, I don't even know whether it wouldn't be legislation per se, but it may be legislation, but certainly it should be reviewed with OMAFRA. Now, when I first read the document, I wasn't concerned about that, but the more we talk about it, the more I realize that there's more at stake here. So that would be one thing. Secondly, there are all kinds of container gardens and planter boxes and all, it's not just isolated to planting things in the ground. So, what is how do we differentiate between what we refer to as natural gardens, or does it include everything? But there's no reference in here. It implies that everything is being planted in the ground. I can think of people that are using their front yards up on Hickson Street, or I guess Mountain Street, is right up to the sidewalk. Quite substantial. It looks great. I don't have a particular problem with it. It doesn't seem to be creating any problems, but it doesn't look like it's covered in this document. What would happen if the neighbors complained about what was being planted there, or they didn't like the smell of the marigolds, or whatever was being planted to protect the vegetables that were being planted? I know that we need direction, but we seem to be in an awful lot of areas, and I don't know how much of it would be classified as overreach. So maybe that could be taken into account as well when this is getting another look. And maybe the document, if it's a little less technical, would also help us not get moving off into directions that we don't need to be into. Because when Ms. Benniam was discussing this, we were talking about 1 meter. Well, this conversation is way beyond that. And I'm having difficulty understanding whether or not we're going to be able to pull ourselves back into something that's realistic for the community. I think that's, I thought that Councillor Miklick's example of the ornamental grasses and the purpose of them being planted was really a good one, because you certainly do see a lot of that. That's probably the reason for it, but if you can't keep other people's animals off your lawn, then you're going to be doing something about that. So I'm absolutely convinced now that this needs another look. There's just a great deal that needs to be considered. So thank you very much, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much, Mayor Easton. Councillor Renchema, would you like to move your motion at this point?
Would I like to move my motion? Yes. I sent some wording to the clerk, so I'll let her have a look at that, and then get her thoughts on that.
I will read out your motion, Councillor.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Thank you.
That committee receive and file for information report PD 1026 regarding maintenance of lands bylaw amendments, and that the proposed amendment to the maintenance of property bylaw be further reviewed in consultation with the Urban Forest Management Working Group, taking into consideration items such as, but not limited to, the enforceability of the proposed buffer zones and the definitions of naturalized gardens, ornamental plants, and human maintenance.
Thank you.
Do we have any questions? Oh, sorry, do we have a seconder? Oh, sorry, I couldn't see that. Sorry, I can't see. There you go.
No,
Now I
that's
see it.
okay.
Our CAO would like to comment.
Through
Please
you,
go ahead.
Madam Chair, to members of council. I was letting the conversation go as we began to start wordsmithing things around the council horseshoe. Staff have actually worked on a motion prior to this, the minute Liz's email came in and was shared with us. Instead of voting on motions and having competing motions, I think ours is as fulsome and incorporates a lot of what Councillor Regima has. Maybe if the clerk wouldn't mind putting that one up, we can look at it, make sure it covers everything, and I think that's probably a better place to start than making sure motions include everything and are done a little bit on the fly. So with council's indulgence, we have a motion that does that, refers it back to staff. We will engage with the tree working group as well as other key staff, maybe some one-on-one conversations with Liz, as we often do as well.
Thank you very much, CEO. Can you please share that motion with us?
That report, PD 1026, regarding amendments to the Maintenance of Lands bylaw, be referred back to staff to further review and consultation, and that staff be directed to further review the proposed suggestions, including if there are any alternative approaches, implementation considerations and impacts, and additional stakeholder feedback, and that staff report back to committee with any potential recommendations or changes at a future meeting.
Thank you very much. Councillor Miklick, did you have a comment to that motion? Just a moment.
Through you to staff, just any concern about timing of this as far as like how long this will take and what's council's, this has to be brought back to committee, then be approved by council. Just looking, is it 2, 3, 6 months? What are our thoughts as far as timing goes and getting this done in time during our term of council?
Director Bruder, please go ahead.
This motion or any motion?
Through you, Madam Chair, I mean, obviously, the sooner the better. I don't think we can afford to wait, something like 6 months, but we're going to try to turn it around as quick as possible, get it back on one of the next cycles that we can. But, we want to make sure we get it right as well. So we will go through that. But no, I don't see any issues with timing at this time.
Okay, perfect.
Councillor Ranjima, did you have a question regarding this motion? Yes, I do. Please go ahead.
Thank you. So I heard the motion and I heard that the suggestions be reviewed or wording such as that. What suggestions does the motion refer to?
By the delegation.
The suggestions of the delegation. And council. So the suggestions that were made during this conversation as well as that were raised during the delegation.
Okay, I'd like to amend the motion slightly to say that have a consultation with the urban forest group. Yeah. The consultation with the urban forest management working group.
We'll just wait a moment while the clerk puts that together. So we'll just wait a moment while the clerk gets that motion on the screen so that we can all review it. So the motion is that report PD-10-26 regarding amendments to the Maintenance of Lands bylaw be referred back to staff for further review and consultation, and that staff be directed to further review the proposed suggestions and consult with the Urban Forest Tree Canopy Working Group, including if there are any alternative approaches, implementation considerations and impacts, and additional stakeholder feedback, and that staff report back to committee with any potential recommendations or changes at a future meeting. Councillor Ranjima, are you comfortable with that wording?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair.
Councillor Russell, did you have a comment to this motion? Please go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And again, excuse the pun, but not to get in the weeds here. Somebody had to say that. With the terms of reference for that working group, is there any overstep? Or is it a general working group that allows them to go beyond tree canopy of the town?
Is there anyone here who's comfortable? All right, Director Bruder, please respond.
Through you, Madam Chair, I mean, It's a good point, Councillor, in that, when we established this working group, it was really exactly what the name suggests. It's supposed to, review policies, best practices, procedures for enhancing the urban forest tree canopy. When I look at this, while there might not be direct alignment with that in of itself, I don't think there's an issue in having those conversations. Ms. Benny and I have had lots of conversations on things like that, although maybe somewhat tangential. We're fine with having a conversation with the group.
Good. So, Deputy Clerk, I'm assuming I need a seconder for that motion? No? Yes, no? All right. Then I will ask you to open that vote, please.
Thank you, Chair. The vote is now open. The vote is now closed, and that carries.
Thank you very much. And I'd like to say thank you again to Ms. Benyon and her colleagues who have joined us this evening to share their concerns and for the fulsome discussion around the table so that we can end up with an excellent bylaw by the time we're finished with it. So at this point, we will now move on in our agenda, and we will consider item 7.2.2, Geographic Information System, GIS, Update and Strategic Direction, PD-13-26. The GIS and Asset Management Specialist will provide comments. Mr. Serrano, please go ahead.
Through you, Chair. Good morning, everyone. My name is Pedro, and I am your GIS and Asset Management Specialist here at the town of Lincoln. This report highlights the town's recent advancements in GIS, including our transition to a centralized GIS framework. Furthermore, the report also introduces our two key applications, GeoLink and Community Map. GeoLink is our internal GIS platform, providing staff with streamlined access to information pertaining to town's planning boundaries and asset information. Or asset structure, thus helping improve day-to-day operations and support informed decision-making. The Community Map, on the other hand, is our public-facing application. This revamped platform is organized into an interactive thematic map pages that improves transparency and provide residents and businesses with easier access to public information and town services. Overall, this modernized GIS framework strengthens our foundation for asset management. It improves access to information, reduces duplication, and making better use of our existing data and tools, enhancing our data management and leading to a more efficient and effective day-to-day operations. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions from committee? Councillor Rentschma, please go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. It's really very interesting. I can see clear efficiencies and in what's happening here. So I'm wondering, through you, Madam Chair, if you're looking for, so there's obviously lots of uses for this over time. So I have one question, and that might be for our emergency services specialist, but I have a question for you. Do you see this being useful for emergency services, and if so, in what way? Through you, Madam Chair.
Through you, Chair, thank you. Absolutely, for sure. When it comes to our spatial information, such as property parcel, for example, when there is emergency people has to evacuate, for example, we would be able to pinpoint the location of where the incident might be, create a buffer around that and all the affected areas, and then make an announcement for those areas. In fact, GIS is also already being leveraged at the regional level, where there is a group for emergency response, and I am actually one of them to help operate with the GIS side of things for the town of Lincoln.
Oh, there you go. That's very interesting. Very good. And another question through you, Madam Chair. What other items do you see being put on this map eventually? Are you looking for suggestions? I looked at Mississaugas, and they have EV charging locations on their community map.
Through you, Chair. Of course, these are great suggestions, and if we have the information in the specific locations of where those EV charging may be located, we can certainly map them into our community map, which is our public-facing application, to allow our public to see those information, as well as our internal map, which is GeoLink. Other applications for it when it comes to internal use, we are starting to collect inspections of our assets, for example, where we can then publish that into our internal GIS mapping application, allowing our staff to have a better understanding of where the current status of our and condition of our assets, particularly our operators are using that kind of information for hydrants and eventually which complies with our regulatory compliance, and eventually with other inspections such as sidewalk inspections or road inspections that we can also start putting into our internal databases.
Okay, and one more question, Madam Chair. Is this proposed to be an interactive system, the community map?
Through you, Chair. Yes, it is actually, it is an interactive multi-page system. So if you type in on Google Community Map Town of Lincoln, you will have access to it. And the idea is so that each, depending on what the user are looking for, they can go into zoning and property boundaries to allow them to visually see where our official plans and boundary layers are at. There are other pages related to truck routes, highlighting areas within the town where trucks can travel depending on their size and depending on the time of the year. And other pages includes tree permit, for example, where we highlight areas where people can cut down trees depending on the diameter and its size. And in there, when you click on the area, they would be able to see the related bylaw that's associated to that.
Okay. My question when I was asking about interactivity is whether there's, I mean, you know how with Speak Up Lincoln, you can ask questions through there. I wouldn't imagine we would want this to be, it's clearly a information sharing tool, not necessarily, an opportunity to ask questions and receive feedback or anything. It's simply sharing information, right? Is that right?
That's correct, yes.
Okay. Thank you very much for that. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Mikulik, please go ahead.
Thank you very much, through you to Pedro. Just when we talk about GeoLink and GIS, where do council members fall as far as access to which or the other? Are we classified as frontline staff? Are we classified as staff to have access to GeoLink or GIS?
Through you, Chair, we can certainly provide access to the councilors should they wish. Yeah.
Thank you.
Director Bruder, please go ahead.
Thanks, Madam Chair. I think that's a good question, Councillor. I think generally speaking, council would not be, quite considered the same as staff on these things. However, that's what staff are here for. If there's certain things, certain pieces of information that council needs, we can endeavor to provide it. Maybe it's through, us working with the software, providing you with the exact images and things that you need or things like that. So the access might function a little differently for you at your interface, but I can assure you that anything that you need over and above that, it's something that you can talk to myself about, and if there's a way to get you that information, we certainly will.
Thank you very much. Again, my concern is that, residents ask me questions a lot, and, it's easier for me to get the answer, look it up myself through a platform than to have to send an email, make a phone call, reach out, wait for a response, this sort of thing. So if possible, I would like that. Thank you.
Through you, Madam Chair, if I could just make another comment. I think part of the advantage for having the public-facing one, the ones that's accessible to all, is that's really the goal of that. We want to provide that information available for residents, for yourselves, for anybody to be able to work with, manipulate. And the whole intention of that is to reduce maybe some of those questions that come in. So that's kind of what Pedro's been working on, is working with staff. Okay, what questions are frequent? What are you running into a lot, and how can we, address some of that through a public-facing portal? But you're right, it doesn't capture everything. It never does. And just like always, we're willing to help and provide that interface as needed for you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Timmers, please go ahead.
Thank you very much, Chair. So not a question, just a comment. To Pedro, thank you very much. I spent some time on this today, and I think it's fantastic. And it has so much information right at the tips of your fingers now. And I was thinking when I was looking through all the different areas, you know, residents can now look these things up themselves. So, you know, often I get questions about things that you could easily find on here, and they can find them now. So I think it's great. So I just want to comment and say thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Reimer, please go ahead.
Thank you, Chair Murray. Through you to Pedro. Thanks for this report, Pedro. A question specifically regarding in Appendix A, page 5, use that as an example, with infrastructure. Taking this data accumulation sort of down the road a fair way, you know, all the information we have over town assets through our different projects, will this allow us to, and our access to, I think our access to GPS points, that kind of thing, will this allow us to design future infrastructure in-house? Like how extensive are these going to be? So I see a topo of the infrastructure. Will that be turned sort of sideways with a 3D view, enabling us to do our own design in-house? Or is that a long way down the road, or is that a possibility? Through you, Chair Murray.
Through you, Chair. Again, that is a possibility for sure if we were given the data. I am familiar with kind of modeling using 3D images. So when there is opportunity for new development, actually the idea, part of the use of the GIS is that when there is new development happening, for example, we look at our existing infrastructure and then identify whether we are capable for that expansion, looking at pipe size, for example, as well as all the other zoning and property and zoning and official plan that are in place pertaining to that area. But when it comes to new development and if we have for example, the height of each buildings, we can certainly create some sort of a 3D mapping interface where people can almost walk through the streets and identify where new developments might be happening or what those new developments might look like if it is in place. So those are applications that are certainly I'm familiar with, and we can certainly make it possible should we have the data.
Thank you, Pedro. Thank you, Chair Murray.
Excellent. So seeing no further discussion, I have a motion moved by Councillor Renchema that committee receive and file for information report PD-13-26 regarding Geographic Information System, GIS, update and strategic direction. I will now ask our Deputy Clerk to open that vote.
Thank you, Chair. The vote is now open. The vote is now closed, and that carries.
Thank you. We will now consider item 7.2.3, Heritage Advisory Committee Annual Update, Report PD-14-26. Our Manager of Planning and Development will provide comments. Ms. Coquera, please go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening. This report provides committee and council with an overview of the Heritage Advisory Committee's activities, accomplishments, and ongoing initiatives for 2025 and 2026. Established under the Ontario Heritage Act, the Heritage Advisory Committee plays an important advisory role in supporting the conservation, protection, and promotion of Lincoln's cultural heritage resources through research, public engagement, heritage designation, and review of planning and development applications. Throughout 2025, the committee achieved several significant milestones in support of heritage conservation and community engagement with the town. Key accomplishments included providing input on the town's private property tree bylaw, reviewing and commenting on a number of planning, demolition, building permit, and heritage permit applications, and advocating for the integration and preservation of heritage features within redevelopment projects. The committee also undertook efforts to promote heritage awareness through participation in community events such as Pioneer Day and the Balls Falls Harvest Festival, where educational displays, historical artifacts, and a large format heritage property map were showcased to the public. This map is now displayed in the planning department too. Additional accomplishments included the unveiling of an interpretive plaque in Jordan, outreach to Tier 1 and Tier 2 property owners to encourage heritage designation, and continued research on culturally significant properties. These efforts resulted in 6 properties being advanced for designation, and this represents the highest number of heritage designations completed within a single year in the town to date. The report also outlines the committee's achievements, goals, and objectives for 2026. Current initiatives include continuing the designation process for several heritage properties, preparing interpretive plaques, planning designation ceremonies, and promoting local heritage through public education initiatives such as Heritage Week, that was this past February, and also the upcoming Heritage Places in Our Town celebration event, which is happening later this month. The committee has also remained actively engaged in monitoring provincial legislative changes related to heritage registers and designation timelines, including advocating for extensions to provincially imposed deadlines to allow municipalities sufficient time to properly evaluate heritage resources. The Heritage Advisory Committee continues to offer expert guidance to staff and council on all heritage matters with the objective of safeguarding and celebrating the historical and cultural elements that shape Lincoln's identity. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions from committee? Councillor Mikulik, please go ahead.
Thank you very much. Through you to Monica. Great job, great work throughout the year. The question I have is understanding the workload of this committee, having not ever sat on this committee, having not been a part of the meetings, not understanding that sort of aspect to this committee, like with trying to amalgamate, with trying to join, with trying to, is there ever any consideration to the idea of combining the Museum Advisory Committee as well as the Heritage Committee? Do they cross paths oftentimes? Is there some sort of a way where the two committees can be blended into one, or is that not feasible? And just what your thoughts are on that, especially if in the future we're going to be reducing our council numbers, allocating councillors to various committees moving forward.
Thank you, and through you, Chair. So the Heritage Advisory Committee it derives from the obligations and powers from the Ontario Heritage Act. So the Act allows municipal councils to establish a municipal heritage committee. It's really separate from museum tasks. There's been no discussion of merging them. That's something maybe I can bring forward to the network of heritage planners. But as far as I know, there's no plans to merge them together.
I'm just throwing it out there. I don't know myself either. Like, it's just when I'm looking at combining, amalgamating, sharing, pooling resources and that sort of thing. I've never sat on that committee to understand the workload. Like, if it's a full 2-3 hour meeting every meeting, then yeah, the answer would probably be no. But if there's not much on the agenda, then maybe there could be some consideration to that. But I just throw it out there, just not as direction, but as backroom conversations that may occur between various members of staff and chairs of committees. How's that? Thank you.
I will also add, through you, Chair, the committee does collaborate a lot with the museum on plaque wording and things like that. As well, we do collaborate with other municipal heritage committees, such as Grimsby. We've collaborated with them on different training.
That's why I bring it up.
Yeah.
Just thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Renchema, please go ahead.
Thank you, Chair Mary. My question is about, so speaking of the deadlines imposed by the province related to all the heritage work and the registry, has there been any opportunity for funding to make, I'm saying, use the term make us whole, I don't know if that's appropriate, but has there been any opportunity for funding toward all the work that the committee is doing and the work that staff is doing to try to catch up with all these deadlines?
No, there hasn't been, through you, Chair, there hasn't been any say provincial or federal funding. All we can do is through the budget process, maybe allow for some extra consultation. Considering we're a smaller municipality without a lot of heritage resources, we can include it in budgeting as far as retaining consultants to do that, to help out.
I know there's a lot of work. Maybe that's something we can consider when we go to AMO and talking about that. I think we have in the past, but there's a lot of work to be done in a short time frame, and only so many of you, right? Is that right? Okay, thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Councillor. There being no further questions, I have a motion moved by Councillor Timmers. The committee receive and file for information Report PD-14-26 regarding the Heritage Advisory Committee Annual Update 2025 Year in Review. I will now ask our Deputy Clerk to open that vote.
Thank you, Chair. The vote is now open. The vote is now closed, and that carries.
Thank you, Lindsay. We now move to agenda item number 8, motion to consider confidential items. Before I read the motion and we move into closed, I would like to explain what will happen for those watching this meeting online. First, there will be a closed session statement that the Deputy Clerk will go through for staff that will be attending the closed session remotely. Once that is completed, we will move on with the motion to move into closed. Staff will be turning off the live webcast during the closed portion of the meeting. Once we have completed the closed portion of the meeting, we will resume with the live webcast and carry on with the public portion of the meeting, and will read the motions in public session. I will now ask our Deputy Clerk to conduct the closed session statement for those attending the session remotely.
Thank you, Chair. All members are reminded that any discussion in closed session are to remain confidential as per our procedural bylaw and our code of conduct for the Council of the Town of Lincoln. Before we begin, I need each member that is attending electronically to confirm the following: that you understand that matters are to remain confidential, and confirm no one else is present with you, and confirm no one else can hear this closed session, and confirm that you are not using any electronic devices other than your tablet, computer, telephone for the video conferencing, and confirm that you are not recording this portion of the meeting. If you acknowledge all of the above, please reply with, "I understand and confirm" to all of the statements as I read your name aloud. Councillor Patriva?
I understand and confirm to all of the statements.
Thank you. And Charlotte?
I understand and confirm to all of the statements.
Thank you.
I have a motion moved by Councillor Pachariva. Under Section 239 of the Municipal Act, notice is hereby given that committee adjourn to closed session in order to address item 8.1 as follows. Pursuant to the Municipal Act, Section 239(2)E, litigation or potential litigation, including matters before administrative tribunals affecting the municipality. K, a position plan, procedure, criteria, or instruction to be applied to any negotiations carried on or to be carried on by or on behalf of the municipality or local board pertaining to Lincoln Avenue. I will now ask our Deputy Clerk to open the vote.
Thank you, Chair. The vote is now open. The vote is closed, and that carries.
Thank you. Staff will now proceed with the technical requirements to move into closed session. All right, excellent. I have a motion moved by Councillor Reimer that committee resume in open session. I will now ask our deputy clerk to open that vote.
Thank you, Chair. The vote is now open. The vote is closed, and that carries.
Thank you. I have a motion moved by Councillor Russell that committee receive and file the confidential updates and that staff move forward as directed in closed session as it relates to item 8.1 pursuant to the Municipal Act, Section 2392E, litigation or potential litigation, including matters before administrative tribunals affecting the municipality. K, a position, plan, procedure, criteria, or instruction to be applied to any negotiations carried on or to be carried on by or on behalf of the municipality or local board pertaining to Lincoln Avenue. I will ask our deputy clerk to open that vote.
Thank you, Chair. The vote is now open. The vote is closed, and that carries.
Thank you. Do we have any committee remarks? All right, seeing none, there being no further business, I call this meeting adjourned at 8:48 p.m. Thank you.